In the summer of 1914, a war began in Europe. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand set off a chain reaction among the continent's great powers. Within weeks, alliances were activated, and nations that had once been at peace found themselves swept into a conflict that would soon engulf much of the world. It was a war unlike any the world had ever seen. The scale of destruction was staggering, with entire towns reduced to rubble and landscapes scarred by endless trenches and shell craters. The old ways of fighting were replaced by new, more deadly methods. Powerful nations clashed, their armies equipped with deadly new weapons. Machine guns, poison gas, and massive artillery barrages turned battlefields into nightmares. For the first time, tanks and airplanes appeared, changing the very nature of warfare. Millions would die in the trenches of France and Belgium. Soldiers endured months of mud, cold, and constant danger, while families back home waited anxiously for news that often never came. The human cost was almost unimaginable. At first, America watched from afar. Across the Atlantic, Americans read newspaper headlines about the fighting, but daily life continued much as before. The war seemed distant, a European problem that did not threaten their own safety. Most Americans wanted no part in this European war. Many remembered the hardships of past conflicts and believed the United States should avoid foreign entanglements. Peace rallies and anti-war protests were common in cities and small towns alike. They believed it was an ocean away, and none of their business. The Atlantic seemed to offer a protective barrier, and many hoped that distance would keep America safe from the chaos overseas. President Woodrow Wilson urged neutrality. He spoke to the nation about the importance of staying out of the conflict, insisting that America should remain impartial in thought as well as in action. He wanted America to be a peacemaker, not a warrior. Wilson believed the United States could help broker peace and set an example for the world by refusing to take sides in the bloodshed. However, staying out of the war proved difficult. As the conflict dragged on, debates raged in Congress and across the country. Some Americans felt sympathy for the Allies, while others wanted to avoid any involvement at all. The United States had strong ties to Great Britain and France. Many Americans had family roots in Europe, and the country shared cultural, economic, and political connections with the Allied nations. American businesses traded with the Allies, supplying them with food and war materials. Factories and farms across the country benefited from the booming demand, making neutrality more complicated as economic interests grew. Meanwhile, German submarines called U-boats began attacking ships in the Atlantic. These stealthy vessels lurked beneath the waves, threatening the flow of goods and endangering lives. These U-boats targeted any vessel, even those carrying civilians, that they suspected of aiding their enemies. The sinking of passenger and merchant ships shocked the world and raised fears that America could be drawn into the conflict. The Atlantic Ocean, once a bridge to Europe, was becoming a dangerous battleground. As tensions rose and the war crept closer to American shores, the nation faced difficult choices about its future role in the world. The tensions between Germany and the United States escalated dramatically in May of 1915. A German U-boat torpedoed the Lusitania, a British passenger liner off the coast of Ireland. The ship sank quickly, killing nearly 1,200 people, including 128 Americans. The sinking of the Lusitania shocked and outraged Americans. Newspapers across the country published heart-wrenching stories of American families lost at sea. Public opinion started to shift. Many Americans now saw Germany as a ruthless aggressor. The attack on the Lusitania made the war in Europe feel much closer to home. It was a tragedy that exposed the human cost of neutrality in the face of unchecked aggression. In early 1917, another event further fueled American anger towards Germany. The British intercepted a secret message from German Foreign Minister Arthur Zimmermann to Mexico. This message, known as the Zimmermann Telegram, proposed a shocking alliance. Germany promised Mexico that if it attacked the United States, Germany would help Mexico reclaim lost territories in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. The Zimmermann Telegram was a diplomatic disaster for Germany. When the message became public, Americans were furious. This was seen as a direct threat to the United States and evidence of Germany's hostile intentions. The telegram pushed the United States closer to war. It was clear that Germany was not simply fighting a war in Europe. It was prepared to bring that war to American shores. Beyond the moral outrage over the Lusitania and the Zimmermann Telegram, Economic factors also played a role in America's decision to enter the war. The United States had significant economic ties to the Allied powers, particularly Great Britain and France. American businesses had been supplying the Allies with food, raw materials, and weapons since the war began. These trade relationships created a strong economic incentive for the United States to support the Allied cause. An Allied victory meant continued prosperity for American businesses. Conversely, a German victory threatened to disrupt these lucrative trade routes and harm the American economy. The intertwining of economic interests with the political realities of war made American neutrality increasingly difficult. Despite these growing pressures, President Woodrow Wilson remained deeply hesitant to enter the war. The world around him was changing rapidly, and the calls for American involvement grew louder with each passing day, but Wilson held firm to his convictions. At his core, Wilson was a pacifist, a man who truly believed that America had a unique moral obligation to strive for peace, not just for itself, but as an example to the world. He saw the horrors of war unfolding in Europe, and was determined to keep the United States out of the conflict for as long as possible. Wilson clung to the hope that he could mediate an end to the conflict, using diplomacy and negotiation to bring the warring nations to the table. He believed that reason and dialogue could prevent further bloodshed, and he worked tirelessly behind the scenes, reaching out to European leaders and urging them to consider peace. In the presidential election of 1916, Wilson made peace the centerpiece of his campaign. He famously declared, "He kept us out of war," a phrase that resonated deeply with a nation weary of conflict and eager to avoid the devastation seen overseas. His message of neutrality and restraint won him widespread support. Across the country, Americans rallied for peace. From small towns to big cities, people gathered in public squares, holding signs and singing songs that called for non-involvement. The deep desire to remain uninvolved in the European conflict was felt in every corner of the nation, uniting people from all walks of life. However, as the war in Europe dragged on, events began to spiral out of Wilson's control. The aggressive actions of Germany, including unrestricted submarine warfare and the targeting of civilian ships, made Wilson's goal of peace seem increasingly out of reach. The headlines grew more alarming and the pressure on Wilson mounted. The sinking of the Lusitania, which claimed the lives of American citizens, shocked the nation and stirred outrage. Then came the revelation of the Zimmermann telegram, in which Germany tried to entice Mexico into an alliance against the United States, further inflaming public opinion. The continued attacks on American shipping, with merchant vessels being torpedoed and innocent lives lost at sea, made it clear that neutrality was becoming, well, untenable. The safety of American citizens and the nation's honor were now at stake. Wilson found himself torn between his deep desire for peace and the growing realization that America could no longer stand on the sidelines. The reality of war was closing in, and the decision he faced would shape the future of the nation and the world. In March of 1917, German U-boats resumed unrestricted submarine warfare, sinking American merchant ships without warning. This aggressive act, combined with the Zimmermann telegram and the growing sympathy for the Allies, really pushed the United States to the brink of war. On April 2, 1917, President Wilson stood before a special session of Congress and delivered a historic address. In his speech, Wilson argued that Germany's actions were an assault on humanity and that America could no longer remain neutral in the face of such aggression. He asked Congress to declare war on Germany, stating that the world must be made safe for democracy. 4 days later, Congress overwhelmingly voted to declare war, and the United States entered World War I. America's decision to enter World War I was driven by a complex interplay of factors. The sinking of the Lusitania and the Zimmermann telegram outraged the American public and really turned sentiment against Germany. Economic ties to the Allies and the potential for a German victory to disrupt global trade routes also played a role. However, at the heart of America's decision was President Wilson's belief that the war was a fight for democracy and freedom against tyranny and oppression. Wilson argued that America had a moral obligation to defend these principles and make the world safe for democracy. This idealistic vision resonated with many Americans and provided a powerful justification for entering the war. The entry of the United States into World War I had a profound impact on the course of the conflict. The arrival of fresh American troops, nicknamed Doughboys, provided a much-needed morale boost to the weary Allied armies. America's industrial might also proved decisive. American factories churned out vast quantities of weapons, ammunition, and supplies, providing the Allies with a critical material advantage. American soldiers fought bravely on the battlefields of France, helping to turn the tide of the war in favor of the Allies. Their sacrifices, alongside those of their Allied comrades, ultimately led to Germany's defeat in November 1918. The war was finally over, but its impact would be felt for generations to come. World War I was a cataclysmic event that reshaped not only the physical landscape of Europe, but also the very fabric of international relations and society. The devastation left behind was unlike anything the world had ever seen, with entire towns reduced to rubble and millions of lives forever changed. The war led to the collapse of centuries-old empires, such as the Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, Russian, and German empires, fundamentally altering the balance of power across the continent. In the aftermath, national borders were redrawn, often with little regard for the ethnic and cultural realities on the ground, sowing seeds of future conflict and unrest. The chaos and uncertainty of the post-war years gave rise to new ideologies and political movements, from communism to fascism, as people searched for answers and stability in a changed world. America's involvement in the war marked a turning point, signaling its emergence as a true global power. The United States played a crucial role in tipping the balance toward the Allies, and its economic and military might became undeniable on the world stage. However, this newfound influence came at a tremendous cost. The war left deep scars on American society, as families mourned the loss of loved ones and communities struggled to support returning veterans, many of whom bore physical and emotional wounds. Over 116,000 American soldiers made the ultimate sacrifice on the battlefields of Europe, their graves a somber testament to the price of global conflict. The Treaty of Versailles, which officially ended the war, was intended to secure lasting peace, but instead, it proved to be a deeply flawed document, shaped by competing interests and a desire for retribution. Its harsh punishments on Germany, including crippling reparations and territorial losses, created widespread resentment and economic instability, leaving the German people feeling humiliated and desperate. This atmosphere of anger and hardship contributed directly to the rise of extremist movements, most notably the Nazi Party, setting the stage for the even greater tragedy of World War II. The legacy of World War I is a complex and enduring one, echoing through generations as nations continue to grapple with its consequences and lessons. It stands as a powerful reminder of the devastating costs of conflict, the fragility of peace, and the importance of remembering those who sacrificed so much. The war also highlighted the enduring challenges of building a lasting peace as the world struggled to create new systems for international cooperation and prevent future wars, a challenge that continues to this day.